Still preparing, setting up your meeting. All right. We are live again at the Beat the Odds at Business and Wealth podcast. And we're here with Josh Spurrell, who is in the Philippines today. And what is our topic today, Josh?
Well, we're going to see if we're going to discuss if reducing Canada's immigration levels is going to crash real estate. So we're going to go through this because I see every time there's an announcement like this, there's a lot of the sky is falling, real estate is going to zero. And so we're going to discuss, should you sell your house right now immediately? Should everyone just sell their house and get out? So I think that's what we're going to discuss. And we're going to identify the one who maybe he should sell his house. So there is a type of person that maybe it should sell his house. And I got that fired up here. So I'm going
All
to
right. Sounds good.
share my screen with you here, Trevor, and let's
Perfect.
look people what we're looking at here. So, ultimately, average price of a house in Canada right now, $670,000. That is not a single family home. That is all housing units, so including condos, and varies, quite substantially province by province, right? And we're well off the highs. We had highs of, approaching 1.1 million in Ontario, but always, you start getting into, we've always been of the opinion when you start getting into real estate that's over $1 million, the buyer pool is relatively small. Now that might, shrink with the new mortgage rules at 1.5 million, right? You might actually, be able to get insured buyers, but still qualification is a challenge, right? And so you've seen most of the declines in real estate has been on the higher end real estate, not on not on a standard, not on a 500,000, $500,000 bungalow. Like that's not where the prices have crashed, right? So that's Canadian real estate that we're dealing with right now. And here's the announcement of immigration on what the targets that, we're seeing. Let's pull up some numbers here on these targets. So the actual numbers, and this is kind of one of those when in doubt, zoom out scenarios. So they want to cut the number of permanent residents from 485,000 this year to 395,000 in 2025. Okay. With further cuts to 380,000 in 2026. Okay. Essentially, that level of cut really, like that level of cut. I wonder if I have that here. Yeah. Okay. We need to put that into context. Okay. So that into context, 485,000 to 395. It's like, there'll be someone on Twitter who's trying to tell people it's like, oh my goodness, that's 100, that's a 20% reduction. The value of your house is going down by 20%. It's like, we need to understand it at a better depth there. And so at 385,000, you are still above 2018, 2019, and 2020 levels. You're still above 2018, 2019, and 2020 levels. This is a different announcement as opposed to someone saying that we're going to eliminate, all permanent residence applications right now. That would be a different announcement. Okay. This is simply saying we're scaling back to 385,000, which is basically, back to kind of 2020, 2019 levels, not a massive change. Okay. So, but there is a type of person who maybe should think about selling their their house with this. So maybe Twitter, the Twitterverse, the kind of the fear porn out there on the internet. Maybe this might be one of them. I think Trevor, you and I looked at this before. It's there's a 13 bedroom Calgary house draws attention from city officials. So it's a 13 bedroom, 1,100 square foot house, and I have the floor plan pulled up here. It's an interesting floor plan to say the least. So this is the main floor, and then you have the bedroom one, 83 square foot, bedroom two, 83 square foot, the 69 square foot, the 100 square foot. You have one kitchen, right? You have a kitchen and you got another bedroom, 84 square foot, and then the primary suite. The primary suite, no ensuite though, 130 square foot. That's the palace, as we'll call it in this house, 130 square foot. Then you move on to the basement, and what do you see? more bedrooms, more bedrooms, more bedrooms, more bedrooms. So 13 bedrooms and 1,100 square foot is like, where is this targeted? Like, this is targeted at the very low end rental market. Okay. So if you were building this sort of a you know slum landlord slum landlord investment, is like, that might not be as desirable as it was, but that needs to give people an indication of how overheated that it was. It's like we're one step away from the Japanese coffin homes where they just slide you in and out so you go to bed at night in your little your little pod, so you don't even have floor space. You share the floor space. So
Yeah,
uh
and they talk about the permanent residence numbers going down. Okay, permanent residency is not necessarily immigration or asylum seekers or refugees or any of these things. Because I mean, I think in the last year they brought in 2 million people. Like
yeah,
that's unsustainable, right?
yeah, yeah. It's but we're not eliminating those types of positions either. And for the most part, the non-permanent residents are not buying a lot of homes. They are taking up rental space, they are taking up shared accommodations. But like, this is how overheated that it was that someone thought that this was a great investment. And this podcast is more about, get rich for sure rather than get rich quick. And this is one of those, like, kind of get rich quick type things. But like, you know, when you have rental property like this, its problem is it's targeted at the low end of the market. It's like, these are where all the problems with tenants, arise, right? If you want the lowest quality tenant, you're going to have the most hassle. So sometimes people think it's like, this might cash flow in an amazing way, but this is in my view, it's a very high risk decision, right? And so
Yeah, to me, that looks like a death trap. One person decides to cook something in their room and catches the whole house on fire. That to me, that
yeah.
just looks like a bad idea.
Do you think there's like a pecking order? Like, do you think the guy in the 130 square foot, place looks down on the guy in the 83 square foot? Like, do you think they make fun of them? Like, I'm just, I'm just like,
Peasant, I have
yeah,
20 square feet more than
I
you.
have 20 square feet more, right? Or maybe there's a family staying in the 130 square foot one, but like, it's just like crazy stuff. Like, you start to see
Yeah.
crazy stuff
Yeah,
because of the
that looks like
shortages,
some
right?
third world stuff that I really don't accept as a Canadian. That kind of a home, doesn't jive with me.
Yeah.
I don't think that's acceptable, and I hope that gets crushed quickly.
So let's just go let's go back to what the problem was. And you essentially have, you're you're looking at the average of the G7 countries, who are basically averaging 471 homes per every 1,000 residents. We knew this. Like, we knew this before COVID. We knew we had a shortage of, we knew we had a shortage of houses long before we had this influx of population. It's like, this is not a new issue. The CMHC, they stood by their projection that Canada needs 3.5 million houses, and they said that back in 2022. So they're saying, like, in 7 years we need to build 3.5 million. We need to build 500,000 homes a year. Okay. Like, so when I say, like, we need to zoom out, people, and then when you start looking at how many homes that we're actually building, it's like, we're only building 213,000 homes a year. It's like, put that in perspective. We were building more homes in the 70s, and our population was, half at that point in time. So, like, there is no expectation that this 100,000, this cut of less than 100,000, less than 100,000,
Mhm.
in the quota level is actually going to solve this problem. Now, might it ease it? Yeah. Might it be a challenge for the new landlord of 167 Whitaker Close in Calgary to fill all those 13 bedrooms? Yeah, it might be, right? But the people from these 13 bedrooms, so a lot of them, they want to migrate to an actual living condition, right? They want to get a job, and this is, what they've been putting up with to now. And so, will it have an effect on housing? Yes, it'll have an effect. But I encourage you, it's like, when you hear the fear pouring out there. First of all, you want to know, is this, someone, I call them the $100,000 net worther. Is this a $100,000 net worther who's never owned a home anyways and couldn't afford one? Or is this, if they do have a net worth, my question to be to them when they're trying to scare everyone else is like, did you put your house up for sale? Because if you didn't put up your house for sale, it's like, I don't think you really believe it, right? So if you're putting your real estate up for sale because when they've cut their immigration quota down from 485 to 395, it's like, I mean, at least I'll disagree with you, but at least I can respect it. But it's the people out there making people think that the housing is going to fall, going to fall to never land because of that quota, but they're not selling their own real estate.
And
And
one thing to think about as well is Canada is a gigantic landmass
yeah.
with various regions that are quite different. So people are there's a net migration into Alberta and Saskatchewan because of opportunity. So I mean, those places aren't going to see the same kind of downturn as Vancouver or somewhere in Ontario the same way. So I mean, if you're in one of those provinces, I think you're probably in a pretty good position as well.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta go back and look at this chart because we post this chart every single month, and you'll see, the BC and Ontario cresting over 1 million, but at that time, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all lower, right? And so you've seen the money migrate from BC and Ontario into Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and you've seen, um, you know provinces with cheaper real estate get the appreciation because people start to figure out that, wait a minute, this $1 million house that I have in Ontario, I get, the same neighborhood and the same finishings for half the price in Alberta. It's like, I'm out. I'm out, right? I don't want to, I don't want to live in a one bedroom. It's like I'm going to move to some actual living accommodations, right? And so, people aren't trees. They figure out that they can move, right? And there'll be an evening out of that price point. When it gets too high in some jurisdictions, it's like, people have leave more motivation to leave to other jurisdictions. So you're 100% correct, Trevor. Is like it's going to be more difficult for people in the overheated areas, right? To sustain that, especially the ones that, they're generating revenue on crazy shared accommodations, right? So it's going to have an effect, but ultimately, it's not solving the shortage.
Now, did you want to talk anything about the 50 basis points drop in the interest rate at all? Because that's going
Yeah,
to have some effect as well.
exactly. Like we have that opposite effect happening where, we're going to have interest rates fall. And we went through the change in the money supply where basically the creation of new money has been significantly restricted. So the CPI number, as manipulated as it is, you're going to see the CPI number. It's going to be difficult for the CPI number to creep up without the creation of any new money. So, you might have, in one respect, some demand being reduced. A little bit dubious, like temporary residents, how many homes were they actually buying anyways? And permanent residents is like in the first year of permanent residency, are you actually, in the market for a house? Like I would suggest most people are in the market for a house after a couple of years of permanent residency, and those people are still around, right? But you have the simultaneous pressure of interest rates are coming down. And if you watched our last podcast, we walk through why we think rates will, most banks are saying that the Bank of Canada rates are coming down to around 2.25 by next year. And we said in the podcast is like we're taking the under on that. Taking the under on that because of that. So you have that working in the opposite direction, and you still see people all the time. It's like, I can't afford a house. I can't afford a house. It's like some of those people will now be able to afford a house. They're going to move from mom and dad's basements or the shared accommodations, and they're going to, take up a dwelling of their own, right? So, unless we fix the supply, which we've never been very good in Canada at the supply. It's like you go back to the housing crisis in 2008 and 2009. It's like, why didn't it affect Canada as much as the US? Is because they produce units at a faster pace than us. That's it, right? They've been
Yeah.
able to produce for a host of reasons. They produce
Yeah, it
use.
was a lot easier to get money as well. Like they were giving out loans to people who obviously didn't qualify, like 0% down and all of these things. So I mean there was a lot of issues that kind of made the difference between Canada and the United States. We had our own difficulties, but I mean that's a big thing. It's more difficult to get money in Canada.
Yeah. So I mean that's what I have for people today. So if you own a house and you're in the market, it's like is a reduction in immigration the greatest for real estate? No, it's a negative factor for real estate, but for the most part, from what I've seen, it's the actual number change that they're describing, and that's I tell people like look at the actual number because if you just hear 20% reduction. It's like, okay, that's 1 year. Go back and look at some history. It's like we're not even dropping below the 2020 or 2019 levels at all. It's like it's a pretty modest deduction that's getting a lot of attention. Just because when you say 20% reduction, it sounds a little bit spectacular, but in the scheme of things, it's pretty ordinary.
Yeah, it's really nothing, especially for the last several years. We've brought in so many people that we just can't sustain with our health system, medical system,
Yes.
jobs, housing, like all of that. So really it's just been overheated for too long. It's a step in the right direction, but I don't think it's gone deep enough.
Yeah.
All
So
right, Josh.
that's what
Thanks.
we have. Hopefully that's helpful to someone, and hopefully we'll see you back on the next episode next Friday, guys.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.